Okay, we are live. This is Attorney Vince Davis, and this is The Secret: How to Fight CPS and Win. And I'm joined tonight by a special guest, Miss Erin Carranza. Miss Carranza,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. For everybody that does or doesn't know, Miss Carranza used to be a host on our platform, but she's gone on to bigger and better things. Miss Carranza, I heard a rumor. I heard a rumor today that you've won or winning some type of special award. Is that correct?
The rumor is that I'll be getting a presidential proclamation for the work that I do reunifying families.
Now,
So,
is that a presidential proclamation from the President of the United States or
yes,
from
sir,
who?
from President Joe Biden.
Oh, wow, that's a really big deal.
I just got one from the California State Senate for
Uh-huh.
my work reunifying families here locally. Actually, I got one from two senators here in California, San Bernardino County and then Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's I'll get the actual award in 6 to 8 weeks, but I found out today that I will be receiving it.
Well, let me be the first to congratulate you.
Thank you.
Now, uh, I see the name of your company is founder of Transformation Through Reunification.
Yes.
Tell us about your company and what you do.
So I am a nonprofit and I help families reunify during separation when they're in dependency court, family court too. Um, we offer all the services that you can get through CPS. We have parenting classes, drug and alcohol therapy, um, all kinds of family resources. We provide um, we provide transportation from court to home for parents or parents that need transportation to their visitations. And we also do reunification classes and coaching with me and supervised visitation.
Very good, very good. Now, if I'm a parent watching tonight and I want to say, "Hey, I want to contact Aaron,"
Mhm.
tell me your web address and your telephone number, and I'm going to ask Grace to type it in the comments and post it on all of our platform. I think we're on
Okay.
eight platforms, but go ahead and tell us.
It's transformation through reunification.org. And my phone number is 909-579-7630.
Okay, very good. Say the phone number one more time.
909
Mhm.
579 7630.
Perfect, perfect. Now, let's say I'm watching the show and I'm thinking, why would I need Aaron to help me in my CPS case? I lost my kids at the disposition hearing. I'm waiting my 6 month or my 12-month hearing.
Mhm.
What is it Aaron can do for me?
So I was a victim of CPS. I had my daughter legally seized without a warrant based on false allegations. And you told me that in your mind, the most important time is when you're doing supervised visits during reunification. That's when they really decide your case. And when I was in dependency court, I was going to my visits, and they don't tell you anything. They don't tell you to bring snacks or toys or games. They just throw you in a dang dingy office and expect you to continue to bond with your child. So when I was doing my own visits, I would actually bring extra toys and snacks and things to do for parents that were new and they didn't understand um, what was happening. Nobody tells you you have to set up your own services. Nobody tells you um, what to say or how to present yourself. No one, they don't even tell you how to dress or any of that. And all of it is used against you, whether you realize it or not. So I found that um, a lot of parents didn't know this stuff. They didn't know how to present themselves in court or talk to a social worker or, how to speak when questions are asked. And I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I've single handedly helped 150 families reunite. I have testified in 7 states in the United States. I have testified in Wales, London, Scotland, and I'm also a court appointed advocate. I was appointed an advocate here in San Bernardino County, and I've testified here in San Bernardino County, LA County, and Riverside County, of course. Actually, I'm testifying tomorrow. But so what happens is, say you come to me, I look over your case plan and see where you are, where we can fine tune you, what the county is looking for, and then we tackle that head on. And one of the things I found was when they said I wasn't benefiting from services. And I realized the way that they worded their questions was, it was general. So say you're in domestic violence.
Mhm.
Oh, well, I didn't realize that gaslighting was abuse. What you need to say is, I didn't realize what my husband or my wife was doing was abuse. You have to correlate it directly to your case, or they can get away with saying she's not benefiting from services.
Give me an example of that, because that's an important point.
Right. So in my case, they said I wasn't benefiting from services because I wasn't correlating what I was learning in their therapy or their services directly to my case. So I didn't, as if for abuse, I didn't know that like ghosting or the silent treatment was a form of abuse. And I wasn't addressing it in a way that they thought was beneficial, because they ask you general questions, so you give them general answers.
Mhm.
And I have a couple of friends in the public defender's office, and one of them told me, she said, it's because they're claiming that you're not benefiting from your services. And I said, how is that? She goes, you need to correlate it to your personal case. I didn't realize this was affecting me and my children, but I've learned from services that this is wrong, or this is where I can work on, or I will correct this behavior. So it has to be very specific.
That's very important.
Mhm.
You know, it's kind of a general thing tonight because we got two other guests we have to get to, but I'm going to ask you to come back because I want you to explain that
Mhm.
in more detail, because I know what you said, but you're going to have to break it down, I think, for the viewers.
Sure.
So my original question tonight was, what are you going to do for me if I'm, dad and I lost my kids and my 6-month review is coming up
Mhm.
in 5 months? Like,
Mhm.
what are you going to do for me? And
So
and here's the important question, posted by Suzanne. What do you charge to review my case plan and advise?
so it depends on where you are in your case. If you're coming up to TPR hearings, we have a lot of work to do in a very short amount of time. Um, and I have a retainer fee, and we can always work on that. And each case that we take on, I handle it myself, and it's tailored specifically to your case plan and to who you are and how you want to present yourself to the court. Because, as we all know, the judge can't rule on anything unless it's in front of them. And CPS is not going to present you in the best light. So, what we do is we help you with that. We submit letters on your behalf saying you've completed services with us, letters of support and recommendation. We have therapists on staff. Um, and so it's very tailored to each individual.
Okay, fair enough.
Mhm.
Now you've said, and I know this happens to be true, you have testified in court in San Bernardino County because of a
Mhm.
couple of lawyers have called me and asked me about it.
Mhm.
And the first time I heard of it, I said, I wonder what she's testifying about. So tell us some of the things that you do in court or for
Mhm.
the parent through court.
So I'm also a CFT expert. Um, I have sat in on several CFT meetings. I will sit in on your visitation with you and evaluate you and see where we need help and so on and so forth. And I will go and testify to your progress, um, that you have been making when you come on with us. So For instance, tomorrow I have been working with a client for 8 weeks, and he's done 8 classes with us. So I'm testifying on his behalf tomorrow morning about the progress he's made, um, what a good daddy he is, and also um, it keeps the county somewhat accountable to their nonsense. It's hard to lie when you have somebody else in the room. So
Give me an example of that. Give me an example.
I had a client who, when I sat in on the CFT meetings, the caseworker's like, "Oh, it's wonderful. You're going to get overnight supervision, unsupervised visits, overnights." And once you get unsupervised overnights, typically you're in the home, you're in the clear, you're in the home run. They don't give you your kid unsupervised overnight if you're a threat. So they made all kinds of promises in the CFT meeting. And then we had court, and their report they submitted was completely different than what actually happened in the CFT meeting. So since I was there, I was able to testify to the discrepancies in the CPS caseworker's report, which they didn't like. They fought very hard to keep me out of the courtroom,
Right.
and the judge allowed it anyways because she actually was the one that appointed me to sit in on the CFT meetings.
Ah, okay.
Mhm.
Interesting. Interesting. That could be important testimony for the parent.
Yes. Usually it is, because like I said, CPS is not going to submit anything that's going to help you get your children back or anything beneficial that makes you look good in any kind of positive light.
Right.
So, there's me.
Now, if I sign up with you, are you going to make me accountable?
Oh yes,
Because
you have to do what the court says. I won't take you on as a client unless you are in the process of completing your ordered services. I might be good at my job, but I'm not a wizard and I can't wave my wand and make certain things go away. And I will not take on your case if you are not doing your drug classes. Oh, I don't want a drug test. I don't want a drug test. I'm sorry. I won't take you on. That's something that's simple and easy. And I can't, there's things that we can work around. Say you haven't finished all of your therapy, but you're in the process. We can work with that. But if the court sees that you are not drug testing, there's nothing to be done. That's it. So you have to do all your services. You have to do your services, your classes with me. You have to participate. I'm not going to take on a client that doesn't really want to fight for their child because this is the fight of your life. And I will
Mhm,
fight with you, but you have
mhm.
to put out as much as I do.
Okay, let me ask you something.
Mhm,
Um, let's say one of the services as a father that I've been ordered to do
mhm,
was parenting,
mhm.
and I don't want to go to their parenting class.
We have a therapist on staff for that.
That will provide me parenting.
Yes, court approved.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, here's the important question. And if the answer isn't yes, I think this is the next thing you and the organization should work for. If you give court approved parenting, will the social worker pay for it?
We haven't gotten there yet. Um, so that's something that would be interesting to look into. All of
Right.
our services come from donations. So if you donate to my charity, to my nonprofit, it goes toward, getting a parent back and forth to their visitation. It goes to paying for supervised visitation for some parents because on average it's about $100 an hour for
Mhm,
visits, and
mhm.
you should not have to choose between paying your rent or seeing your baby. I think that
Right.
is a monstrous choice that anybody should have to make.
All right. So in my case plan, the judge has ordered me to do individual counseling.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't want to go to CPS as counselor
Come
because
to
I
us.
think there might be a conflict there. CPS pays them. Are they going to say what CPS wants them to say?
Right.
That's what I hear a lot.
Yes.
And I've actually seen that, right?
Yes,
So, do you have a counselor you can refer me to?
I do.
Okay.
And
And
I know that in my case, I'm actually getting ready to sue the therapist in my case for HIPAA violations because the therapists are only allowed to say a handful of things in the documents that they send to the court. Are you attending? Do you show up on time? Are you participating or are you making progress? Yes, no answers. They are
mhm,
not allowed to fill it up with what happens in your therapy. That's a violation of your HIPAA. So, in the beginning of my case, you pointed out that that was a violation of my HIPAA and I needed to look into it. And what if that's happened to you, you can go to the Board of Behavioral Science if you're here in California and you report your therapist because HIPAA violations are no joke. It's $500,000 per violation, and they take it very seriously. So, if you've had a case where your therapist has just said everything that you've said in therapy, that's a violation. They're not
right,
allowed to do that.
right. Okay, Miss Carranza, because
Mhm,
I have a packed house this evening, I've got 2 more guests to come get to, but we're gonna invite you back. Before we, leave, I want you to give us your website again
mhm.
and your telephone number again, and I'm gonna ask Grace, our producer, to, post it in the comments on all our platforms here tonight.
Okay. It is transformation through reunification.org. You can also find just if you just want to Google Aaron Carranza, you can find me. I'm the first person that pops up on Google, so that's I'm a little excited about that. My teenagers were like, "Yeah, mom, woohoo!" But I thought it was cool. And then my phone number is 909-579-7630. 909-579-7630.
Okay, well, thank you, Miss Carranza, for being a guest tonight. Um,
Thank you for starting me on this journey, by the way, Vince.
oh, no problem, my pleasure, and I'm glad you've taken it in the direction you have, because I know you're helping a lot of people that need your assistance. So anyone who has been ordered court-ordered reunification services, or even if you've just given reunification services at the beginning of a case, I think Erin will be able to help you. So give her a call, look at her website, and see if she can help you regarding this reunification. Uh, Sometimes circus. You know, it could be get out of control, and it's the easy way for the social worker to keep your child away from you if you're not
Mhm.
doing and approaching the reunification services the right way. So, Aaron, thank you very much for being on this evening, and we'll be talking soon. Okay,
Alrighty.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Aaron.
All right, Mr. G, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, sorry about that being late. I dumped all my
Oh,
computers today and not testing them. I was
no problem, no
giving me a
problem.
second.
We
Sorry about
we
that.
got we
Aaron's
got a
great. Aaron's awesome. She does a lot.
we're gonna add our next guest, Miss Gemma. How are you, Miss Gemma?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Ventura, California.
Oh, not too far away from me.
Yeah, pretty close.
So you have a CPS case in Ventura?
My kids did. My kids. I'm a grandmother. I was trying to get my granddaughter. I've actually had 3 granddaughters removed. Um, well, I had 3 daughters. Each of them had a grandchild removed, and we Italian women have a saying: "It the child of my child is twice my child," and it's true.
Hmm.
It's it really hurts to have a grandchild removed. It does, and
Well,
it's yeah.
was the child removed from you or from the parents?
It was removed from the parents, but they didn't approve me to keep the child. The first 2 was because people living in we live with a lot of people, and they said that there was too many people in the house, and just different reasons. And then the third one was because the judge actually said she was on the fence about it, and she couldn't make up her mind. And she said that the baby had been in foster care too long, and she was just going to leave her there.
How long is too long?
8 months.
Did you appeal that?
I did not appeal it. No, I was crushed. I was just mentally drained. And it was the third time it had happened. And I didn't have any more. I didn't have anything in me to appeal it, and plus I'd spent $43,000 on the case, and I didn't have any more money to appeal it.
This evening, you're on the show. Were there some questions that you wanted to ask me?
There was, yes. The first question is there a statute of limitations on sending a social worker to social worker purgatory or up to Sacramento, whichever that is, on for their behavior, for straight up lying, things that can be proven?
Well, first of all, making a complaint, an administrative complaint against someone, for it to be investigated and maybe taken action against her, either civilly or criminally, I'm not aware of any statute of limitations.
Okay.
If there was one, it might be like 2 or 3 years. There is a statute of limitations on you suing the social worker, and that's 2 years.
Okay.
Under federal law, 2 years. And
Okay.
I just had this discussion with an attorney last week. If you're going to sue a social worker or any governmental employee or agency, if you're going to sue on state-related claims, state constitution, state laws, state common laws, you have to file what's called a governmental tort claim. And you have to do that fairly fast. And if you miss that, you can't, without judicial relief, you can't sue on your state claims.
Okay.
But when you sue under your federal claims, the federal constitution or federal statutes like 42 U.S.C. 1983, you don't have to file a governmental tort claim. You can just sue them.
Okay.
And since 1983, and I think the constitutional claims, there's concurrent jurisdiction, which means you can file in state court or federal court. I know in a lot of cases that we file in state court, but we have federal claims, the defendants remove that case to federal court. They think that strategically the rules of procedure and evidence and juries are going to be more favorable to defense or to the CPS workers there, which is not always true, but it's a general theory that they have. So those are the applicable time limitations.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and one more. I have another question about. I always thought that juvenile cases were confidential.
They are.
Okay, well, I've found 31 publications in the local VC Reporter here for, and it's with the car auctions and the other public auctions. In between all of that is the parental actions and juvenile cases, where it's just out in clear sight for the Ventura County Superior Court juvenile cases, where it's listed. It's where you can basically buy a baby. It gives people plenty of time, 3 months ahead of time. It's where it's listed. Basically, the social worker puts it in the paper, or somebody does.
Well, what I think you might be mentioning is the requirement to give notice to a parent of, for example, the termination hearing. In California, in California, when there's a legal action started, you have to serve the person with paperwork.
Okay.
And if you cannot find the person, you have to apply for the judge and tell the judge you've looked everywhere, the DMV, the voter registration, tax records, everything, and you still can't find Joe Blow.
Right.
And then you ask the judge to give you permission to serve that person by what they call publication.
Right.
Publication takes place generally in a newspaper or a legal newspaper, but sometimes it's, the general newspaper in the area. And once that's done, and I don't think I've ever seen a person find out that he had a case or she had a case through publication. It's just a formality, so to speak. So that's what I think you're thinking of. You may be thinking of. But
I did that when I was getting guardianship of one of my granddaughters. I had to do that, but I didn't put her name in there.
Right. You're not supposed to put the kid's name.
Right. But the kid's name is in there too. The baby's name is in there as well.
I think that might be a mistake.
Yeah, the baby's
General-
name and date of birth is in there.
Generally, what they'll do is, for example, let's say the baby's name was Vincent Davis,
Hmm.
7758. Okay. What they would do is they would say Vincent D, 7758, not my full name. Now, are you saying that the newspaper has the full name of the kid?
Full name, date of birth, and the case number. Yes.
Case number I can see, but full name, I don't know. In
Yeah.
my experience and my knowledge, that would be a mistake.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah. That's an interesting technical legal question. But if I had to answer it just off the cuff, like I have, I'd say the full name is a mistake. It shouldn't be there.
Right. Hypothetically, at the termination hearing, what if, because the parents aren't married, so technically they just have to assume that the father is the father, because it says and all after the father's name. What if and all showed up like a flash mob and claimed to be the father with proper paperwork? Would they have to put off the termination hearing until and all were tested?
Yes, absolutely.
That'd be a shame, wouldn't it?
Well, it depends on what side of the case you're on.
Yeah, I know.
If you're the foster parents, it'd be a shame because you wanted
Yeah.
to adopt. But if you're the parents, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it would be. I mean, the judge would probably not be too happy, but yeah.
Constitutional notice is constitutional notice.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I don't think, the judge being happy or unhappy is not really an issue on this particular kind of thing. Either they're noticing these people correctly or they're not. If
Yes.
they're not, they can't go forward. What I have seen, and I really disagree with this, but I'm not the judge. What I have seen in cases like that is they go ahead and terminate anyway, but they stay it, meaning they put it on pause until they get the notification right. And once they get the notification correct, and then they have the court date and the person shows up or doesn't show up, then they say, okay, we'll take the stay off the order and make the termination of rights effective.
Okay.
So many things are done in the judicial system in order to conserve judicial resources. Sometimes the conserving of judicial resources, kind of mixes over constitutional rights or rights of individuals. So it's a very delicate balance, and I see people making those arguments all the time.
Yeah.
So, any other questions you have for us, Miss Gemma?
I'd like to know if there's anything that can be done about, my grandchildren. One of them that was adopted out, her social worker was related to the birth father, and apparently she used to get high with the birth father's father. And I don't think used to get was the proper terminology because of the way she acted all the time. I think she was still probably using. But I wrote up a motion to remove social worker because of the way she was related to the grandfather and the way she would act. I thought it was a conflict of interest, and my daughter's attorney wouldn't put it in. She just acted like she had no use for it. And
well, one of the problems sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes is, court-appointed attorneys may not be as aggressive as other attorneys or as aggressive as you might want them to be. And the reason why is because they're in that courtroom every day. Right?
Right.
Kind of a social dynamic. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that just happens. And maybe that's why she made that decision. I don't know. She might have thought it was frivolous. I don't know. Was the social worker on the case?
It was a social worker on the case. Yes, it was my daughter's social worker.
Okay, well, hold on a second. I was going to say I know for a fact, but I'm not going to say that. I believe strongly that a social worker who is related cannot be on the case.
Right.
Okay. And if that happened, you should file a complaint with the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C., You should file a complaint with the Justice Department, U.S. Justice Department, Civil Rights Division. And you should also file a complaint here in California, in Sacramento, with Department of Social Services.
Okay.
I'm almost positive that if you're related, you can't be on the case unless, this would be the one unless, all the parents and all the parties signed something that said they would waive any conflict of interest. I
Okay.
don't know if your daughter did that or the father did that. I just don't know. But that's the only way I can see the social worker being allowed to stay on the case. And if this was brought up to the court's attention, and you lost, you should have appealed that. Or if you didn't bring it up, it might be a basis to set everything aside by fraud on CPS's part. Hey, you didn't even mention the fact that the social worker is related to one of the parties. It's a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something you should talk to a lawyer about. I will tell you something, and I bring this up because I'm so impressed by this. This is several months ago. We had a woman on the show from San Diego County. Her rights had been terminated for 5 years. And I can't remember exactly, that the kid had been adopted by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she never gave up. And 5 years later, she ended up getting her rights back and the child back. Now, it's a long, involved story. The moon and the stars had to line up just the right way, but it happened. And I know that it happened because I know the attorney that represented her. And I know the attorney that represented her because I referred that mom to him. So never give up. Never
Yeah,
give
I'm
up.
not.
Anyway, Miss Gemma, I want to thank you for calling in and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it. If you have any further questions or anything, give us a call, 888-888-6582. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
All
good
right.
luck to you. All right, Mr. G.
Yes, sir. Here we
You
go.
hear all kinds of interesting things that happen on these CPS cases, don't you?
Yeah, it's just it's all heartbreaking is what it is.
I
It's
know.
just
But
back to
a social worker related on the case that's on the case, that's, in my opinion, that's strictly a no-no.
well, what do you do about those situations? I know that
Well, you have to make a motion. Like if this was never disclosed to the judge, what Gemma should do is contact a lawyer, make a motion, and attack the termination and the adoptions and set it all aside.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have a related social worker on the case and it not being disclosed.
No, I would think that that's definitely a conflict of interest for sure.
Yeah. Hey, let's bring on our last guest this evening. We're going to bring on Miss Brittany White. Right. How are you, Brittany?
I've been better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. Where are you coming to us from?
From Nampa, Idaho.
From where?
Nampa, Idaho.
Idaho. Okay.
Idaho.
I've been hearing good things about Idaho. A lot of people moving there.
Yeah, a lot of people move it. Yeah.
Especially during COVID, a lot of Californians going to Idaho. That's what I heard.
It's getting very big. I'm born
Yeah.
and raised here, and it's crazy how much it's changed. So, yeah.
Do you know where Boise, Idaho is?
It's just probably 10 or 15 minutes away from me.
I actually know someone who moved to Idaho with his family and moved his company to Idaho. And everyone that was working for him had to move to Idaho or they had to, leave the company.
Dang.
But he loved, he thinks it's the best place in the world to raise kids, to fish, to hunt, do all that good stuff.
Yeah. If you're into that, it definitely is. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're avid fishers.
What's going on with CPS in Idaho?
So, what isn't? All right, so I'm going to start. I have some questions, but I'm going to start with my backstory to kind of fill you in and then go to where I'm at now. So in 2021, I was pregnant, was homeless, majority of my pregnancy up until 3 weeks before I had baby. We moved in with baby dad's mom.
Okay, talk a little bit louder for me.
Okay. Moved in with baby daddy's mom. And can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so there was alleged homelessness and drug use. When in the very beginning of my pregnancy, before knowing, I had admitted that I did use prior to knowing I was pregnant. So that was in there, whatever. So CPS showed up at the doctor's or at the hospital when I had the baby. Everything tested. I was negative for all the tests. Everything was fine. We went home. They showed up a couple days later. They kind of opened up a case a little, it was kind of open or whatever it will. I was completely blind to any of this prior to knowing anything about you. And then baby dad, I'm trying to not say names. So baby dad's, him and his mom have a very toxic relationship. So they got in a big fight. She made him leave. Well, then a couple days later, he came back. She still wanted him gone. We had to do drug tests for CPS. So we went to go do that. And in the meantime, we decided to go stay with his aunt. And we were just going there, but they needed to know where we were going, whatever. Well, so we were there. We told them where we were. They gave all the names, everything. 2 days later, they called and said they wanted to check out baby, put eyes on baby, and just make sure everything's okay. To meet us at grandma's house. So we did. I had an awful feeling about this, right? They surrounded us with the CPS and the cops, everybody. They took baby into custody because come to find out the uncle from like 30 years ago had a bad divorce. The wife claimed he had done things, so he was registered. I didn't know that.
You mean registered as a sex offender? Okay.
So I was at that point. They took her into custody because I was endangering her by having her in a home with a registered sex offender. So she went into custody. 18 months, fought like crazy. Dad was incarcerated for 6 months of it. I fought like crazy. In the end, they were wanting to separate the dad and I. Ended up getting my own place, getting a job, all things. I was pregnant again. I had our second, they're exactly, or 1 day shy of a year apart. I got my daughter back in February, vacated the case. And now fast forward to where I'm at. And so I have my own home, working, taking care of both babies, pregnant again.
Holy
And so I have little Irish triplets, about to have Irish triplets.
Triplets?
Dad was,
Triplets?
Irish triplets. No, Irish triplets. So Irish
They're all
twins
1
are
year.
they're under a year apart or a year under. And
Oh,
once
I
they're
see.
Irish triplets, it's going to be the same thing. So
Okay. Got it.
so 3 weeks ago, Dad was awaiting sentencing. He was facing being sentenced and possibly going away for a while. He's battled with drug. We battled like with drug use, but I've been clean for months, and so he was not doing good. He lost his place 3 months ago, and I went ahead and let him stay with us while he was awaiting sentencing because it was very likely that he was going to go away, and he's a felon already. So he was staying with us while waiting for that. 3 weeks ago, he kind of lost control of himself and ended up accusing me of he was accusing me of either thinking that I was giving the kids drugs or he never really like he pretty much I was giving the kids drugs. I wasn't even using drugs myself. So CPS was called. He called CPS, and then we went into the hospital because I was going to prove like the kids and I are clean and just do a drug test. Well, they ended up calling CPS, and the dad called CPS as well. So they showed up 2 weeks ago, and I know this is where you're going to shake your head and think, why did you do this? Because I know better. You would think I knew better. I know all the rules. I know. Okay. I had nothing to hide. I knew I was perfectly fine. I knew everything was okay. So I let them in. I have nothing to hide. There's, why not? And willingly went and did a hair follicle test on the kids and I and dad. Monday they showed up and with very high numbers, numbers that I've not even hit in active use on a drug test for the kids and I and the father, which, by the way, last Monday, the father was sentenced and then was sentenced on his probation violation charges and is going to prison for the next year and a half. So father's gone. They show up on this Monday.
Well, do you still have the kids?
They took him into custody on Monday morning. They showed up with the officer and with the failed drug tests that I never in a million years, ever, never, I would not have drug tested had I not known without a shadow of a doubt that, well, I mean, I believed that everything was fine. I never would have been like gone in and done that. And now they not only are they that we all tested positive, but we tested positive, like I said, numbers that I didn't hit when I was in active use. So they have that. That's what they're that's why they took them for the positive drug test. And then I just got my papers today. We have tomorrow is our I forgot the name of it right off the top of my head. Shelter care hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So
We
pretty
call
much where
that
I'm at.
we call that the detention hearing here in California, but a lot of
Okay.
states call it the shelter care hearing. But go ahead.
Okay. I guess right now, so they're not appointing me an attorney until at least tomorrow. And so I was really thankful. I had already like scheduled to talk with you, but I was really thankful once I found that out because now I'm even more scared. Like not having any kind of like legal on my end for tomorrow. Like I want to have my babies back. Like I already fought for 18 months. I never in a million years would have gone in. I wouldn't have. And I wouldn't even have let them in my door because I already know my rights. I wouldn't have let them in my door if I knew I had something to hide. And
hold
so
on a
now
second.
was
there a CPS case open when you let them in?
no.
No? Okay. So I'm going to tell you right now some of the things that you should do, okay? All right. First thing you got to do is make a list of about 25 relatives that can live or friends that live anywhere in the world that could take care of the babies. You got to get them with a relative and get them out of foster care.
They are with the next of kin
Okay.
right now.
Are you friends with that next of kin? Or is it the mean, mother-in-law that never liked you?
No, I'm friends with her. We've been friends for a lot of years.
Okay. Number 2, you need to seek out Darren. This is why we had OO on the show.
Right. Yes, sir.
You need to seek out someone like a forensic scientist or drug testing person. Because if you're telling me that these were errors, there are ways that you might be able to get the test thrown out. And I don't know if you saw our show. It's been 2 or 3 months, Darren.
Yes,
We had
sir.
an attorney on. He's here in California, but he testifies as an expert all over the country. His name is Okori Okorocha. You don't have to write it down. It'll be on,
Okay.
the internet forever.
He reran
But if
last Saturday, I believe, actually. So it's right up close in the list.
so, Okori with an O,
Okay.
Okorocha, and I think it's spelled like it sounds. Now, he informed us things that I didn't even know as a 37-year attorney. There's scientific things about drug testing that I just didn't know. So if you're telling me that, these tests are false, you need to get someone like that to go into court to examine the testing, maybe even examine the facility to make sure that these tests are being done accurately. Now, here's the other thing. It's I believe it's a federal law that anytime a drug test is done, you can demand a retest on that same sample.
That's
Because
what I was gonna do.
drug testing is not 100% accurate, just by
Right.
definition, right? I
Right.
think there's a plus or minus 3 or 5% error rate. False positives, false negatives. Okay.
Right.
Nobody's ever questioning the false negative, but the positive, we got an issue.
Right.
So require the test. The retest. The other thing I would do if I were you, I would go out and get retested myself, hair follicle or something, to show the judge that, hey, there's no way that you had that level of drugs in your system. And if it was extraordinarily high, I remember talking to a Corey about this a few years ago. If the sample is so, or the result is so high, if you had that much in your system, you'd be dead. I forget what the level is.
So it's like, this is the crazy. Okay, so like the cutoff is 200. Is it okay if I say numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, so the cutoff is 200. My daughter's was like a 4 something. Mine was a high 700. My 10-month-old was a 1600.
Yeah. See, and here's the interesting thing: when they came to test you, I don't think any of them are going to be able to testify that you were high or intoxicated. But at that level, not only would you have been high, you would have been falling down, and at some of those levels, I suspect that you would be comatose or dead.
Especially a baby.
So you need to get
a baby. Like it doesn't even I was in active addiction or in active use, and I think it was like 20 points higher when I was using that day.
Right.
It's impossible.
Right. So you need to get that type of expert to do that type of review for you. If you find my show, that's on at 7 p.m. on weekdays, you'll find Corey's information, or you can just Google him and call him and ask him either for a referral in Idaho or how much he would charge. I have a feeling he charges, he's expensive, because he usually testifies in cases for DUIs where a person can't have a DUI, for job work. Some of his clients have been high profile, so to speak, government officials, law enforcement officials, and are challenging the DUI testing. So that's the type of information you have to get. Now, unfortunately, you can't testify to this. You can't Google it and then go into court and testify to it because you're not an expert. You wouldn't be able to qualify as an expert. So that's why you need to get somebody that is an expert. And maybe if he is too expensive, maybe he can, and then he has to travel on top of all of that. That costs money. Maybe he can refer you to someone in your state or in your area that could come and testify. Because some of those levels that you're mentioning, I'm no expert, but they're incredibly high, and you'd probably be dead or comatose, or at least falling down, unable to speak to anyone. And how could you have done that if the police were there and you seem normal?
And
So
the first set of police who came when she requested the drug test blatantly said, we don't see any concern to take them in. We don't see any, they're happy, they're healthy.
There you go.
So
there you go.
What do you suggest for me? I mean, do you have any suggestions for tomorrow? I want them to come home. I'm happy to go with it. I have not, like I said, I have nothing to hide. I've already worked this before, whatever, but I want them to be home if I'm going to do it. Like I want them, is there any chance do you have any suggestions of a way of me getting them home while I figure this all out with them?
Yeah. Well, here you got to look at this from the prospect of the judge, okay?
Yeah.
Not from your prospect, from your eyes,
Yeah.
because that's a mistake. It's one of the first things I learned when I went to the trial lawyers college with Jerry Spence. I've been looking at cases up to that point through my own glasses. Only problem was I wasn't making the decision, right? You got to look at it through the glasses of the guy or gal who's making the decision. So you have to look at this from the judge's point of view. With those high rankings or high test levels, if you're the judge, are you going to risk your career and give the kids back to the mother and just say, hey, I'm ignoring that? No. Judges, although, we're hoping that they're doing the right things, in the back of their mind, they're trying to move up in the judge world, get promoted, get, more responsibility. It's like any other job. Right. And if you're in charge of the safety of children, are you going to give this lady back her kids with everybody testing at these high levels? The answer is no.
Right.
The answer is no. Not at the shelter care hearing, at the very first hearing. You're going to have to get some evidence, some expert witness to come and review everything. Now, you could make some arguments like, hey, judge, if I was at that level and the kids were at that level, we'd all be dead, and the police said we look fine. So those has to be a mistake. But at the first hearing, it's going to have to be a very progressive judge to say, okay, I'm going to ignore all that. I'm going to give you your kids back. Right? The other thing that I would do, I would try to, it may be too late because it's already almost 7:30 p.m. on the West Coast. Try to get a test myself, a hair follicle to prove that that test was wrong, because you have a subsequent test that shows you don't have any drugs in your system.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
But I would talk to my attorney if they're going to appoint you one, talk to the attorney and say, look, the cops said everybody looked normal. If we were at that levels, we wouldn't have been normal. It's an obvious mistake.
Yeah.
Luckily, your kids are not in foster care where they're with a friendly relative, and, hopefully things will work out there as well. Hey, Brittany.
Thank you.
Our show is coming to an end.
Okay.
Actually, we're a little over. If you would like to come back this week and tell us what happened tomorrow at your court hearing, I'd be very happy to bring you back on. And I'll have Grace, our producer, contact you, or you can contact her and arrange to get back on. Because I really would like to know, what they're saying about you and what, how they're going to justify those being accurate tests. Now, here's one last thing.
Yeah.
It sounds like you actually had drug testing done, because one of the things that we learned from Corey is that there's drug screens and there's drug testing. Drug screens don't meet what they call the Kelly-Fry test for scientific evidence to be admissible. And if you object, they won't come into evidence, or they shouldn't come into evidence. Now, I don't know if drug screens give you levels, right? But if it's a drug test, you have to go in and you have to attack the procedures of the testing facility. So that's one of the first things you should look for tomorrow. Are they giving results of a drug screen or a drug test? If it's a drug screen, tell your lawyer, hey man, I heard from this crazy guy named Davis that drug screens don't meet the Kelly-Fry test and they shouldn't be admissible into evidence. And of course, he'll look at you like, quit listening to those guys on the internet, right? But that's something that you and your attorney should look into, because that's what Corey Okorocha told us. And it was something that was new to me.
Interesting.
Okay.
So a drug screen is not admissible.
Correct.
Oh, it's not admissible if you object,
Right.
or should not be admissible if you object, at least in California. I don't know about Idaho, right? I'm not licensed in Idaho, but I would bet $1 that if it's not admissible here, it may not be admissible in Idaho. Because, most states in the federal government or the federal courts have this test, the scientific test. Before something can be admitted, you got to, the test has to raise to the level of something, really reliable. And apparently, drug screening is not really reliable. And Corey explained to us why. So if you find the link to that show, watch it. Okay.
Okay, I will for sure. Absolutely.
All right. I look for.
One quick thing. Do you have anybody here in Idaho that you could recommend for what I need for a lawyer?
To be honest with you, other than my friend who moved to Idaho with his business, I don't know anybody. And he's not a lawyer. He's in a completely different business.
Yep. I was looking because you said like they need to specifically be for whatever the word you use. I can't bring part, but and I don't see any. So
Well, you know what?
whatever.
I don't know if you've
Figure it
used
out.
Google or the Yellow Pages or something, but Google knows all in terms of trying to find attorneys. That's the best place to start, looking for attorneys. So
Okay.
I would
All right, well,
Google juvenile dependency lawyer Idaho, CPS defense lawyer Idaho, that type of thing. And although they may not be in where you live, I'm sure there might be someone in Boise,
Okay.
And you said that was 15 minutes away?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So stand by
All right,
and
well,
wait
thank you so
for
much.
Grace's
luck.
call. Brittany, thank you very much
Okay.
for being on. Good night.
Mm.
Hey, Darren, any last words? I have an
No,
appointment.
no, just don't let them people in that door. And man, this
That's
get your
tough
lawyers, people.
when you let
They
them
come to
in.
your door. Call your lawyers.
Yeah. Okay, Darren. Well, we will see you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Good night,
Yes, sir.
everyone.
We get the Mr. D birthday countdown coming up.
Ah, okay.